Hello, I'm Julianna Forlano, and now coming up are the headlines. Joining me today to go through what is in the Build Back Better bill now that it is finally passed is Jocelyn Macurdy Keatts, ACT TV's DC correspondent, and I would say, a segment producer of the show now, since you're here every week, which is great.
Hello. Hi, everybody. How are you doing this beautiful Tuesday afternoon?
Well, I'm happy to have you here. Let's talk about what stayed in the bill. I have a theory that most of the things that stayed in are things that are friendly for corporations, even though on the outside they seem like progressive, the progressive victories, which they are, but at the same time. Anyway, you start.
Well, so there is a lot. The goal for progressives and Nancy Pelosi was to pass the BIF, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and Build Back Better at the same time. That didn't happen. After the Virginia and New Jersey elections, a lot of Democrats were kind of scared into, okay, let's just pass something. So Friday night at I think around midnight, the BIF passed. And now we're headed towards getting the care part of the infrastructure package passed by Thanksgiving. That's the ideal. And Speaker Pelosi seems confident that people are going to be able to work together and come to something that will work for everybody with childcare and elder care and all those other big ticket items that have been spoken of so excitedly over the past few months.
Wait, so what is already passed?
So what's already passed is the concrete infrastructure. So some, high billion-dollar investments into green energy, roads, bridges, all that kind of good stuff. And it's a win, honestly, for us. I mean, we ended up getting 19 Republican votes on the BIF, and it is like these are the biggest progressive spending bills to ever pass through Congress.
I have to say, this made me very happy. I mean, all of this talk has been of cinema and mansion and mansion and cinema and cinema and mansions mansion. They're going to stop everything. They're going to slow everything down. And then you get I had heard zero that Republicans would be voting for this, that it would be zero Republicans. And we absolutely needed these two nutty Congress people who are not, I don't know how they call themselves Democrats at all, but anyway, they're just placeholders for progress. What's the deal with that? Why did the media not say, well, but they also have 19, possibly 17, they could have discussed that, but then I guess no one would be excited and there'd be no cortisol release during the show. How would you sell product?
Well, I think the thing about reconciliation that's different than another bill passing through Congress is with reconciliation, you just need a simple majority, which means it's filibuster proof. We don't need the super majority you need for a lot of other legislation, like voting rights legislation, for example. Yeah. So I think the focus on mansion and cinema was more of just like, if Democrats hold the line on this, we would be in a much stronger bargaining position. But ultimately, I mean, especially with the BIF versus the Build Back Better, we did have some cross-partisan work on this, which is, and we're living in the most partisan time in American legislative history. So that's exciting. It is a win.
It is definitely a win. Yes. I don't want to take away from the win. Do you think that there will be as many or less or more crossover votes from the Republican Party when it comes to passing things like, childcare, family leave, that kind of stuff?
I think that is definitely more of a fight, which is kind of why we're in this having to split them up more. I think what Democrats wanted was for both to pass because both involve a lot of investing in green technology. And Biden wanted to carry that victory with him when he went to Europe for the climate summit. That obviously did not happen. But it looks like we might actually, have everything we want before the holiday season. Everything we want. Well, you know what I mean. A lot of what we want.
A lot of what we want.
And that's a lot of what we want. Victory, including, I can't believe I forgot to mention this, investing in broadband in a more I mean, I don't know if
that'll be great for this show because sometimes Jocelyn travels to the Netherlands and not reach her. She went, where did you go? Michigan?
Northern Michigan. Yeah. Northern Michigan. Key on the northern because I'm pretty sure in Detroit
they've got it. Yeah.
No.
You never know.
there, but right. I mean, like, but access to fast internet without having to pay exorbitant fees absolutely is a public good, especially as we pivot more and more to remote work and remote schooling. People not having access to the internet puts them at a serious disadvantage, both economically and just interpersonally. I mean, you know, more and more, especially last year in the pandemic, people were seeing their doctors online. Like, it's unconscionable that in order to get fast internet in some parts of America, you have to pay like $200 a month.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. I don't think my life would be, you know, uh, it would be, it would be not, not possible if there wasn't, you know, internet access. But of course, I'm paying for it myself. It's not like you know, it's not like broadband for everybody over here in the wilds where I live. Which I would be happy for. That would be good. You know, I watched John Oliver's Last Week Tonight this past week, and he talked about one of the main reasons that we can't, you know, have more of a green energy economy is because of the transmission wires from where they can put the windmills and solar panels to the places where one would need the energy and the electricity are just not, they don't have the capacity to carry the amount of energy and electricity that is needed. So rebuilding these transmission wires, you know, the big electrical wires you see everywhere, is going to be a major, not problem, but it's a major project that we have to take on if we really want to transition to green energy. Is there anything in the bill that addresses this issue?
Muting and unmuting my mic.
Oh yeah, I know. I heard some feedback there, but we'll see.
This is totally my fault. I'm in like a very echoey space. But yeah, so there is going to be, again, like,
you're literally coming to us from the echo chamber.
Literally, a literal echo chamber. The goal of the BIF is to bring America's hard infrastructure up to speed, and that fortunately means a lot of investing in tech. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because obviously passing through Congress doesn't necessarily mean things are funded yet. The Congressional Budget Office still has to have, like, do all that kind of thing, but it'll definitely be a longer process. And, you know, I was reading like public intellectuals commentary on this stuff, and it's a lot of this will be in the implementation, you know, because the reason this was an easier pass for Republicans is because, like, the whole debate over this whole thing all year has been, what is infrastructure? And a very deep philosophical question that, you know, what does it mean to invest in the public good? And obviously progressives were saying, well, okay, people can't go to work if they don't have childcare. People can't do their best if they're paying exorbitant hundreds of thousands of dollars into elder care. But, you know, the Republicans are more like, infrastructure is a bridge, and that's it.
Exactly. Because it's guys, or I'm sorry to bring gender into this, but it's like patriarchal, not just gender guys, but patriarchal thought processes. It's a thing. Child care is not a thing. We don't even think about it because that's not valued in our country. You know, it just seems so old, a so old way of thinking.
Well, and I think that's absolutely correct, right? So, you know, obviously everyone knows Congress is mostly millionaires, but that makes that leads to a really horrifying situation where these people are entirely removed from how much care is costing your average American, your average middle class American, who probably makes too much money to receive, you know, certain healthcare benefits, which is like, obviously, we're not saying take away benefits from working class Americans. That is not what we're saying. But then have to pay out hundreds and thousands every year to have someone take care of their kids, to a point where it frequently cancels out the point of going to work at all, which is not what we want.
Absolutely. So give us a little more detail. What did we win in addition to what you said?
So let me pull up. Okay. So for the BIF, we have $110 billion in transportation projects. We have $1 billion in reconnected communities, which something that, like, I really wasn't educated on before this bill is that there are a lot of communities, especially communities of color, which have been subject to serious devastation by highways running through them.
Oh my God, that's my family.
Yeah.
No, for real. I mean, and that was all of Brooklyn. I'm from Syracuse, New York. They take a highway and they run it through the working class neighborhood, regardless of race. But now it's kind of, it's falling more on Black Americans.
Well,
Hispanic
in
Americans.
the public health impacts of that, I mean, those communities end up devolving into cancer clusters pretty quickly, because you think about the carcinogens that are spewed on households every single day. If you have fuel emissions just like being pumped into people's backyards, it's horrifying.
It really destroys the community because it doesn't allow foot traffic. It doesn't allow, and they do it by eminent domain too. So there's a lot of horror going on here that should not be going on. I remember when I studied a little bit of Robert Moses, who put the highway system together in New York City and down Long Island. He made the overpasses that you had to pass through in order to get out of the city to the beaches of Long Island. He made them too small for buses to fit through, so as to curtail the ability of people who had to take public transportation to get to the beach, to be able to, get to the beach. And it was done by design. It was on purpose.
It's disgusting. And it's something that, I think we've talked about this on this show. Environmental justice is something that doesn't get nearly enough attention, which fortunately does get some attention in this bill, because you ask most people what environmental justice is, and they'll say, well, it's a healthier environment. But no, right. Environmental justice is in reference to the fact that different communities will feel the impacts of the climate crisis first. And the way we prevent that and the way we make things more equal is by making sure those communities are safe, that they receive the investments they need in healthcare, and again, not having, carcinogen plants built right next to where kids and families live, that we make sure that we are investing in disaster safe infrastructure. So communities like New Orleans aren't receiving just completely preventable disastrous effects every time there's a hurricane, because these natural disasters are going to get more and more frequent. And the point of the BIF is to be investing in climate proof technology. Obviously, the United Nations reported we're in a code red for humanity at this point, right? Like, we can't stop this. But what we can do is invest in a public infrastructure which makes people safer. And we are going to be doing some of that. So that's good.
What do we have? We have a little bit of video here. Didn't we bring a little bit of video? Jocelyn, what do we have? Set us up.
So I think that this is where the video you're talking about is just looking at the Congress passing this late Friday night. It finally happened. No, it's not.
No, we don't have that one. Hold on. No, John Carl is in the background giving us the move on.
Wait, are we hearing from President Joe Biden? Is that what we're hearing?
Are we hearing from President Joe Biden? I think we are. Here he comes.
Be clear. We will pass this in the House, and we'll pass it in the Senate. The Build Back Better Act will be a once-in-a-generation investment in our people, getting America back to work by reducing the cost of child care and elder care, and getting millions of women back in the job who have to stay home because they cannot afford the child care or the health care for their parents. Providing universal pre-K for every 3- and 4-year-old child in America, and increasing their academic achievement potential significantly. Making healthcare more affordable, lowering prescription drug costs, the tax cuts for working people and the middle class.
That's true. Is it me, or does that sound like we will pass this in the House? We will pass this in the Senate. We will not have this on a bus. We will not have this with our lunch. Like this. I'm reading too many children's books these days. I will not eat them in the house. I will not eat them with a mouse. The green eggs and ham business. But
hey,
he's still very hopeful about being. No, okay, well, you can come over. He still seems pretty hopeful about passing the rest of this stuff. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was something that I am perceiving. I mean, there have been a number of things cut out of, the next portion of this bill that he wants to pass before Thanksgiving. Some of the things that got cut out are, they wanted to do hearing, vision, and dental for the elder, or, for people on Medicare. Now they're just saying, fine, we'll just do the hearing. What? You know, the husbands in the world are like, oh, finally, I don't have to hear anything anymore. Now, now they're going to fix it. Just kidding. But one of the things that they are cutting out is like the paid family leave. And that seems, but they're leaving in the childcare, the childcare. And I just thought, gee, that's a real corporate friendly cut. Paid family leave is something that companies aren't going to love. They don't want to lose their workers, but free pre-K for families is great because it frees people up to go to work. You know what I mean? It frees people up to go get that job, to get, keep showing up at the Amazon warehouse, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts about that perception?
Well, it's really important to note that researchers have done, like psychological researchers, educational researchers have studied universal pre-K for a while and found that it's a great equalizing force for children to receive educational care and just supervision at such an early plastic stage in their development. And it also obviously is wonderful for parents. We have more single mothers in the world right now than ever before. And what does that say, right? Like if you don't have a marital partner, you're either relying on family or you're having to pay for childcare, something that is like, again, egregiously outsized expensive, especially if you want to get something good. So a public availability for working parents and single parents is going to be a game changer.
Right. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying definitely keep that, but we should also keep, paid family leave.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate that we have to choose. I'm just saying the choice that was made was something that was a corporate friendly choice.
Right. No, and I mean, I think you're absolutely right about that. The attitude towards family leave in America is shocking to me. The first thing I wanted to be when I was younger was a midwife, and it was incredibly strange to be studying midwifery and learning about the effects of birth on the body and the family and how much women go through postpartum. And then you combine that with the American ethos of, oh, the minute you're not pregnant, it looks like you're fit to work again. And what that does to the mother and the child, which are so early in their stage of connecting and bonding, it's really disturbing.
It's very disturbing, and it causes children to have lowered outcomes, lowered IQ, lowered health, etc. And when people achieve lower, all of society loses out on that. So I wish I wish all of America would look at this in a holistic way. Like, we need to support our children. These are our American children, not your children versus my children.
Well, and also, okay, I mean, the thing that I think we talk a lot about, and I just, you look around us, right? And everybody, it's very difficult to find people in America who aren't traumatized by the way things are going. We have a system.
Oh, yes. What? This is a perfect segue for our next segment. Keep going.
I mean, but seriously, I mean, we have a system which forces parents to be in a constant state of overwork. And guess what? The more overworked you are, the less available emotionally and just physically available you're going to be to your kids. One thing that really shocked me when I was getting my psychology degree is that the number one intervention that brings down domestic violence rates is financial subsidies. And people don't want to talk about that. They want to think that domestic violence is just like villainous.
Somebody's bad because they're mad.
Yeah, which of course, sometimes it is that, and nobody is at all recusing anyone from responsibility. But they found that in communities where there were financial interventions for struggling families, domestic violence rates, both against spouses and children, dropped dramatically, because at the end of the day, the number one thing you can do for families is make sure they're not in a constant state of anxiety and overwork.
Well, it's interesting that you should bring that. It's not just overwork. Now we're all in a constant state of anxiety. I mean, as a mom, I was just talking about, we're going to talk about this next crazy thing that that happened in the world. The concert in Houston, where there was a crowd crush. Did you hear about this, Jocelyn?
I actually did not.
Good. I want your fresh perspective. That's very good. So, a musician, Travis Scott, on Saturday Well, he said there were on Friday night, 8 people at least at this point died at the Astroworld Music Festival in Houston, which is put together by musician Travis Scott. Um, Tons of individuals, I don't know how many, were also injured, and we're talking bad crush injuries because they were trampled after a crowd surge at the festival, which the musician founded 3 years ago. The Houston mayor, who is Sylvester Turner, said that a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, 2 21-year-olds, 2 23-year-olds, a 27-year-old, and one person of unknown age died. And I'm back to what we were talking about terror. To me, this whole thing has to do with capitalism, making money. They cut corner. There was some safety concerns brought up at the beginning of the concert. Concert organizers did not heed the calls. I had some images of what happened, but I'm going to let you go and look that up yourself. We have maybe a still image, but there was tons of video because people all had their phones out at the concert. So there's lots of video of people being just crushed and unconscious people being lifted up over the crowd and help not being able to get to people. It's pretty disastrous. But the fact is that I have 2 lines of thought here, Jocelyn. One is that my first thing is like just feeling for the parents of those young people who have lost their child now due to the fact that someone wanted to cut corners and save money and not have security in place. And, I think that people and parents are living in a higher state of anxiety because of just generally the fact that we're living through the end of capitalism, the end stages of capitalism, where people are, there's no security at a concert where hundreds of thousands of people are going and crushing up against. There was no grate. There was just like people standing. There were no seats. Jocelyn, do you remember when, I don't want to age myself, but as a fan of the Dave Matthews Band, remember how you would, not you, but one, maybe me, for example, would like go, you'd get a ticket, there'd be a seat for you in the stands.
Yeah.
And then you would get one person's ticket from the floor and make your way up to the floor. And if security was tight, you wouldn't be able to do it. But if it wasn't tight, you might be able to get closer to the front of the stage, etc. But everyone had like a chair. There was more of a crush, but not like there were no chairs and they just let in several 100,000 people. This just seems like you're taking your life in your hands and there's no security checks. And it's not just a concert. The concert makes the point for the fact that this cutting of corners in all areas causes parents and other people to just have this higher level of anxiety that just creates a worse world for everyone.
I mean, 100%, Juliana. I feel like I have to regulate myself sometimes because it makes me so frustrated when I speak to people of older generations who are done raising their children and don't have self-awareness about how stressful
You mean
and terrifying
boomers? Are you talking about
right now?
You're talking boomers, right?
I most certainly am. Yes. I will spend time with boomer relatives, unfortunately. And, these issues will come up and it's be like,
Jocelyn, in this issue, it wasn't boomers. It was like, Travis Scott was part of the planning committee. He's right. Not a boomer.
Well, he's a young rapper, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's part of the mindset of capitalism.
Yeah, 100%. It's bizarre. It's like, so you're going to have a slightly more profitable concert that results in murder. That can't be good for your brand, right?
Well, somebody's getting sued, but suing is not enough, to bring back.
Especially if you're a parent who lost your 14-year-old child. I can't even imagine.
No, it's really sad. My heart goes out to these people, and it is terrifying to let your kid anywhere these days because it's very hard to trust when you deregulate everything and there are no rules for anything, including concert safety.
Well, and especially
it's very hard to trust in your society. I feel like this is part of watching society crumble.
No, 100%. And, how vulnerable we as consumers of anything pretty much are right now. right? Whether it's the food we eat that may not necessarily be regulated the way it needs to be, or going to a concert, which should be a pretty, I can't even imagine being anxious about a sibling or cousin going to a concert, right? So it's just a horrifying thing to hear.
And guess what it does? It sells more anxiety pills. Xanax.
Yes.
Xanax is making a bank with the fall of our civilization here. Anyway, you can follow the fall of our civilization right here on Act TV. You're watching Act TV right now. Okay, so any final thoughts on this? I mean, we could go for a while on this. I was going to play the video of what happened, and there are, as a former therapist, there's this idea of secondary traumatization, where when you're talking to a traumatized person, you pick up the trauma yourself. And there were so many cameras and so much news on the scene that you really got these people who had been traumatized, who had seen, I saw an ER nurse talking about having seen someone have their head kicked in because they were being trampled. I think that one lived. I don't know. But I didn't want to secondarily traumatize you, our viewer, because we here at Act TV try to navigate the fall of civilization while also not leaving you completely depressed at the end of the show, right?
Well, and it's really interesting, right? So I'm reading this book. This was New York Times bestseller last year.
Wait, show it in the camera.
Yeah. This book.
Yeah, you were going to send me one of those. We got to get the author on here. Get the author on.
Her point is, how to manage your anxiety, how to heal from your childhood. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking like, okay, these are all wonderful topics, but this Dr. LaPera, has been criticized as problematic because her solutions are so individualistic. It's like, all right, I'm obviously all about individual therapy, but it's like you're saying, Juliana, secondhand trauma is a real thing. And if we're living in a situation where life is objectively traumatic for all of us, maybe we should be talking about the policy decisions which create this world. And yeah, sure, go to therapy, of course, by all means. But
you wouldn't need that much therapy if there was a social safety net where you knew that if something should befall you, and things befall every single person on this planet, that if something should befall you and when something befalls you, you will be held. That takes away the anxiety that underlies every American in this country. You literally step across the border into Canada and you feel like, and I know they're not perfect and they don't have everything and it's not heaven, but it's, there's no guns in the street and they have healthcare.
You nailed it. Seriously, you nailed it. We need to get that on bumper stickers, Juliana.
Well, because the anxiety level is down, so people are working out of their rational minds. And I'm sorry, but when you work out of your rational mind, you don't buy as much stuff just out of a panic. You're not in this fight or flight limbic system state where you're trying to protect yourself or you're trying to win or you're trying to any of that. You're making rational decisions based on what's good for you. what
and this is where I do think that the self-help genre can do just as much harm as good, because if we're telling people that the solution to all the anxiety they feel is yoga, and then they're going to start to internalize this idea that it's somehow irrational to feel extremely anxious in a world where we're dealing with climate crisis, people getting trampled to death at concerts, a pandemic, working longer hours for less pay. These are objectively traumatic phenomena on their own.
It's
much less combined.
Our good friend Harriet Fraud, who's a psychotherapist and a second wave feminist she was at the front line of all of this in New York City. She has a podcast called "It's Not All in Your Head," and I think it's not all in your head. Yeah. And that's basically what she talks about. So I love having her on. We're going to have her on soon again. Maybe you could be here too. That would be awesome, Jocelyn.
That would make me very happy. Yeah.